This episode is brought to you by Llama Wood. Llama Wood is building a bridge between premium firewood and your fireplace by making it super easy to get bulk firewood delivered right to your wood pile. I became excited enough about this company that I've been an early advisor to them since before they were founded in 2020. Their intuitive online firewood delivery marketplace provides an easy way to burn more fires because you get access to highly vetted suppliers all across Virginia. Each are ready to deliver premium seasoned and kiln dried firewood right to your wood pile with a 100% money back guarantee. That's risk-free firewood delivery, folks. You got to try it. Llama Wood also lets you easily subscribe to weekly deliveries, earn rewards every time you shop, and they even sell log racks that they will fill up with wood for you. They are truly a one-stop shop for enjoying life around the fire and keeping your wood pile tidy. For a limited time, Learning to Dad listeners, that's you guys, can get $50 off when you place your first order. Book your wood delivery today at llamawood.com and use code L2D at checkout. Again, that's L2D at checkout at llamawood.com to save $50 off your first order.
First off, I love my kids.
This is Learning to Dad.
I'm the cool dad. That's my thing.
With Tyler Ross.
What I do have are a very particular set of skills.
I'm gonna have fun, and you're gonna have fun.
Hey, Tyler here with Chris Larsen. What's up, man?
Tyler, great to be here, man. And you're in an area of the country that I love very much.
Yeah, I understand you've bicycled through here more than once.
Yeah, Skyline Drive. I used to work out in that area, like on the 66 corridor, going out from the DC area to, kind of, what would you call it? Southern western or the northwestern tip of Virginia. I can't even think about how to say it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would park and I would go ride up that first part of Skyline Drive. And just a gorgeous part of the country.
It's incredible, though. You're in Asheville now, right? Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah.
I haven't been there since I was a little kid, but I understand that is a hot spot to be. It's just gorgeous and great scene.
Yeah, we're very blessed. We're very blessed. It's a wonderful place to raise a family.
How long have you been down there?
We moved here in 2008, so it's almost 14 years. Yeah, had both our boys here.
Yeah.
Been through kind of wrapped up one of my careers and started another business. My wife's an architect here in town, so yeah, it's been wonderful. We have nothing but wonderful things to say about the area.
Wonderful. I'm excited to come down there and visit sometime. And I love food.
Come on down.
I love real estate, so I want to check out the Biltmore. And I understand that the restaurant scene is pretty good down there.
Oh, it's so good, and we got 2 Airbnbs, Tyler. So
we
got places to stay.
Yeah, if I end up coming down there and drag my kids down there, we'll stay in one of your Airbnbs and you can take us to the best spot to eat down there.
Deal.
Cool. I dig it. So, hey, cheers.
That's crazy. Look at that. Cheers.
That's not peach pear, is it?
It is pamplemousse.
Ah, okay. Oh, peach pear. We didn't exactly get the same memo, but we were close.
It's close enough.
Yeah.
Close enough.
So just to get rolling a little bit, like if you're at a cocktail party and somebody says the classic question, hey Chris, what do you do? Like what's your chambered answer for that?
Yeah. So I used to say I work in the medical device field. I sold medical devices. I worked for a big company called Medtronic for more than a decade. And over the last year, I formally left the med device industry. And now what I do, we basically have a private equity group and we buy real estate. So we bring in, formally we say we syndicate real estate. So we're buying big real estate deals like apartments, self-storage units, mobile home parks, that sort of thing. But I'd love to talk about that because it was a big shift in identity going from, a W-2 role where you're like, hey, I make all this money and I do this thing. And now I don't really know what to say. So I've had to refine that over the past year here.
So I want to hone in on a word, syndication, quickly, because for as long as I've been in real estate, it doesn't seem like a word that's commonly used. And you even flirted with that when you said, you started to shift. Tell me about syndication and your shift away from syndication.
Yeah. So we've been syndicating deals for about 6 years now. And what a syndication is, so if you're listening, you're like, I've not heard this term before. Or you've heard like, even TV, like they syndicate TV shows, and the word's thrown around there. But what it simply means is we bring in investors alongside of us and we buy apartments. So we're taking an apartment building, we're putting it into an LLC, and then we're allowing investors to come in that LLC and basically purchase that building alongside of us.
So you make the acquisition up front, or at least get it under contract up front, and then you pitch it to your investors via some sort of like private placement memorandum and that you already have. And it's probably a series of investors that you've used before. And that's
exactly right.
Okay. And then
that's exactly right.
Do you kind of go to like a 5 to 7 year hold, or is it kind of, based on what the market's doing? How do you manage that?
Yeah. So our general strategy, Tyler, we go in, we find we're all over the country. We have 5 people on our acquisitions team. We love the Southeast, and we can talk about kind of why we moved here and why we like this area. But markets like the Carolinas, Florida, Texas, Georgia, Atlanta. Go Braves, by the way. Take my boys down there to we got to go to one of the games. But awesome. So we find an apartment that we want to buy. So we find a complex that we want to buy. And let me see if I have one I can kind of show a picture of. So we say, okay, this nice. Makes sense. This is a property in just outside of Houston, Texas. We say, all right, this makes sense. We like the area. It's growing. There's a lot of other factors that we want. We either talk to a broker, real estate broker, just like if you were buying any other property, or sometimes even the owners directly. And what happens is we make an offer that works for us. And about 98 times out of 100, we get a no. And somewhere between 1 or 2 times out of 100, we get a yes that makes sense. And out of 400 to 500 deals we're going to underwrite this year, our team, we'll make about 8 acquisitions. So, 7, 8 acquisitions total. So once we figure that out, we got something under contract. That's when we go to our investors. We say, hey, Tyler, we have this deal under contract. If you're interested, we put together all the information. We typically have a general informational announcement that goes out. Then we have our formal investment offering, which I was just showing you there. We do webinars. And then you mentioned a PPM, so a private placement memorandum. So that is really kind of the final legal document that we prepare. We send to investors that formally ask to invest with us. And then once they review that, investors get to review that. They sign it, talk to their advisors. Then they fund the deal. We take that money, we fund that LLC, and then we go and we close, we buy that property. And then that's when the fun really starts, because then we got to operate it. And we actually got to implement a business plan to make money for investors, and investors get to sit back at that point and they get to be passive. And that's when they get their dividends that start coming in.
Awesome. So when you're looking at deals, is it purely metrics driven? Because you're in different jurisdictions, so I'm going to ask a second question. How do you get comfortable in that jurisdiction?
Yeah, it's really, and I talk about all these things in my book, which I'm happy to share with you if you're listening today. It's on my website, nextlevelincome.com.
And it's a free download, right?
Absolutely. Well, not only is it a free download, but if you're listening, if you click on the book link and put your address in, I'll send you a free copy as well.
Oh, excellent. Very cool.
Yeah. But we talk about in my book, I kind of drill down into all these different things. And yes, I'm an engineer by training. So I went to school to be an engineer, but I always joke. I said I wasn't smart enough, and my advisor told me I had too much personality to be an engineer. So I should do something like sales. So here I am, right? But I'm still a numbers guy. The Southeast works because of the demographics. So let's not treat it like Chris Larsen treats a spreadsheet and looks at this. Let's just take it from a really high level. If you're listening, you say, well, where should I buy real estate today? Really simple. You want to buy real estate where people are moving. So why do people move to an area? They move to an area typically because of money. They either want a job where they can make more money. They want to have a lower cost of living where they can save more money or have more time with their families. So an area that's growing typically has employers, growing employment base, they have growing demographics, they have growing population, and that's really the lifeblood of what we do. So we focus on these big markets. So let's say North Carolina, where I live, Tyler. I say, okay, North Carolina is one of the fastest growing states in the country. All right, that's good. Now we go into North Carolina and say, all right, what are the best cities in North Carolina? Some of the best, fastest growing cities in North Carolina are Raleigh, Charlotte, Wilmington, Asheville too. Asheville's a little small, so we'll kind of shelve that for a second. And then we say, okay, which of those fast growing cities in this fast growing state have a nice employment base? So you take Raleigh. Raleigh has, think about it, universities. So people probably listening have heard of the University of North Carolina. You have NC State. You have hospitals. You have Rex. You have WakeMed. You have these hospital employers that are there. You have the Research Triangle. You have all these different employers and levels of employment that provide a really stable economic base in Raleigh. Also, the cost of living is pretty reasonable. So we can go in there and, there are properties that are in the Raleigh area. They're between $1,000 and $2,000 a month rent. So that might sound cheap to somebody that's in like San Francisco, California. It might sound a lot to somebody that's living in a very rural area of the country, for instance. But for us, that's a really nice sweet spot when it comes to rents. And then we start to look for the properties that make sense for us. We want to buy properties that are typically built in the last 20 years. We're buying properties that are what we would call B+ or A quality properties. So these are properties that are going to have a little bit of a higher quality resident base. And what I mean by that is you have residents, you have renters in that property that are making significantly more than the national average when it comes to a renter. So if your national average of income in a household is say $50,000 or $60,000, our average renters in our properties are oftentimes north of $80,000, sometimes even $100,000 in these properties. And then once we've honed in on those, that's when you kind of alluded to this, Tyler, you have to develop the relationships, because when you're buying a $50 million apartment, you can't just walk in and say, hey, I'd like to buy this apartment and I'm going to put a contract on it. What happens is the seller actually vets you and says, well, what are your terms? How fast can you close? What is your track record? What other deals have you done? Let's look at your history of, bargaining, like in negotiating throughout the process. Have you ever not closed on a deal? All these things matter a lot in these larger transactions. And oftentimes we don't have the highest bid on the properties that we buy, but we have the best combination of terms that we offer along with the price. And only at that point do you finally get to the stage where you can put an offer on a property and ultimately tie it up under contract.
So I'm gonna lay out a suspicion, and you can correct me or redirect me. So I listened to a presentation that Sam Zell gave. It was an interview. I think it was Andy Florence of CoStar and Sam Zell.
Yeah.
And Sam Zell was talking about how COVID had pushed a lot of people out of the inner cities, but he said they're going to come back. Offices are going to come back. Yeah. And you want to know why? The Museum of Modern Art isn't going anywhere. So people like having those amenities around. So when you're going for these B+A locations, I was talking with my friends I was watching it with, and we said, how do you acquire something with such a squished down cap rate? And the ultimate thing that we came up with is you pay for it because it's worth it. So when you're looking at things like that, I'd imagine that you're looking at lower cap rates. So your business model for profit is, I guess, on a longer term with appreciation, and it just kind of carries itself.
Yeah. So that's a great question, Tyler. So cap rates move in a trend, and that trend follows typically the 10-year note. Mm-hmm. So as rates have gone down, cap rates have gone down. Okay. Capital chases yield. So if you look around the world, you have to say, okay, where's capital coming from? Where's it going to? And it's going to areas of investment areas that are providing a yield, that are providing a return. We're not paying 100% cash for a property. So if you paid 100% cash, your cap rate, if you have a 5 cap, for instance, for every $100 you pay, you're going to get $5 of income, right? So if you haven't heard cap rate before and you're listening, that's a really simple way. You take 100 and you multiply it by the cap rate. If it's a 5% cap rate, and you're going to get $5 of cash. The inverse of that would be if you have $5 of net operating income in a property at a 5 cap, you divide it by 5% or 0.05, that's going to give you $100. So that's how you determine the value of a property. However, if you buy a property at a higher cap rate, so let's say you're looking at two properties, a 4% cap rate and a 6% cap rate. The properties that are those 6% cap rates over the past year or two, they have had higher vacancy. They've had higher no pays in those. They've had higher maintenance costs, higher amounts of capital that have had to go into those. So what that means is it's no different than buying a residential property. You might say, hey, this property costs $500,000. That one costs $400,000. But the one property is going to take $50,000 or $75,000 to fix up the $400,000 property. If you're putting 20% down on the great $500,000 house is going to be $100,000. If you put 20% down on the $400,000 house, you're like, well, hey, it's cheaper. We can build up some equity in that property. It's going to take $80,000, which is 20% of 400. So it's going to be 80,000 plus that 75,000 to fix it up. I think that's the number I used earlier. Yep. So you say, yeah, but Chris, I have an extra 25,000 of equity. But if you add those two numbers together, that's $155,000 that you had to put down on that property. Mm-hmm. So you have to think about, in some of these lower cap rate properties, the numbers aren't necessarily an apples to apples comparison. You have to put more money down. You may have to put more money down. You have to put more money into fixing them up, which means you need more money in reserves. You need a capital expense budget, which is going to increase your original cost to purchase it. And then you might not get as much income out the other side because, we've seen 10% vacancy rates or no pay rates in some of these, lower quality properties. So that's part of the equation. The other piece of the equation is when you raise the income of a property $1 in a 4% cap rate property, you increase the value of that property $1 divided by 4% or $25. If you increase the value of a 6 cap property, and I'll use my calculator here to make sure that I get it exactly right, you only raise the value of that property $16.67. So 25 divided by $16.67, that's a 50% difference. 50% increase in cap rate, 50% difference in the value. So if you look at the income, the vacancy rates, the lack of pay, the increased capital, as well as the increased value on the other end of the spectrum, lower cap rates, it's a different equation, but it's not always an apples to apples comparison. So we take all those things into account. And what we love to have, Tyler, is we have high cap rates to start and low cap rates when we exit, but we don't, fortunately, we don't assume that. We make it work for investors, assuming we're not going to have that great environment, but that's certainly icing on the cake if we can do that.
So you go from engineering at Virginia Tech to selling medical equipment, and in between there, you had bought at least a single family or two, but then you managed to jump into these really significant multifamily investments that require millions of dollars. And tell me about the first one of those and how you got involved and what inspired the move to do that.
Yeah, so I think an important thing to mention is a lot of people ask me, Chris, when did you start doing this real estate thing? And I always tell them, I started as an investor and I just needed a way to make money, which that's how I found the medical device industry. I said, okay, I'm going to buy enough properties, get $10,000 of cash flow coming in a month, and then I need to make enough money to pay these properties off. So that $10,000 is going to come to me. There's no debt service on it. There's no mortgages. So that was kind of my original plan when I started. I always had this investor mindset, and I kind of refined my strategy over the course of about 2 decades. Buying my first property at 21, it took me about 15 years to really figure out and optimize what I was doing on the real estate side. But that first property, so my original partner and I, we were already investing in this space. So we started investing in apartments. And what I found was I was managing my own single family rentals, so condos and townhouses, and had a couple in Blacksburg. I had some in Northern Virginia, Richmond, all over Virginia. I kind of moved around the Virginia area, and I was self-managing most of them. And what I found after about 10 years, a little more than that, was that the equity that I'd built up in those properties the return on that equity was pretty low.
Mhm.
So I was only getting about a 7% return on my equity, the actual capital that I had in those properties. That's not a great return. If you're listening and you're probably shaking your head like, I can do better than that. Yeah, you can. And the
With
worst
way
thing
less
was,
trouble.
yeah. And the thing was, I was also paying tax. So when I learned about multifamily, I was introduced to it by a guy at a meeting my wife and I were at together as we were helping her grow her business. I'm like, wow, like the light bulb went off. And as I learned more about it and the demographics and everything, I thought, okay, this is where I want to invest my money. After investing for a few years, my partner and I, we looked at the people we were investing with and we said, well, geez, we have more experience than they do in the real estate space. So we ended up partnering with them in our first deal. It was a 100-unit property in Atlanta, Georgia, And it was 100 units. So a nice round, nice round number. We paid $9 million for that property, scraped together enough money to buy it from friends and family. And fortunately, again, we had the original group we invested with to help hold our hands and kind of be aware of some of the pitfalls that we should watch out for, help set us up with the right management company, the right lenders, the right attorneys, all these sorts of things. And again, that's a huge piece of advice, if I might stop here for a second. If you are embarking on a new path, in investing or anything else in life, find somebody to help you out, find a mentor, find a partner, find somebody that you can, pay for a little bit of advice so you avoid, those big pitfalls. So we closed on that property in August of 2016. So we're more than 5 years now into this, and we're about to close on, I think it's our 15th property here over the last 5 years.
That's awesome. Tell that first one. Tell me about how puckered up you were to get involved in buying a $9 million property. And at this point, do you have your boys at this point?
Yeah. So my boys are about 10 and 12. They're going to be 10 and 12 here. Depending on when this airs, probably split the difference here. But my son will be turning 10 here in the next month. So, yeah, this was, certainly had both my boys. And oh, by the way, I was working full time in a W-2 job. And I thought, okay, how, I'm calling people that I knew that I had a relationship with, that I knew had an interest in real estate or investing, and that knew a little bit about me as well. But, I started making phone calls, and I will tell you, now this is coming from somebody that's been in sales since I was 12 years old. I mean, selling wrapping paper door to door, selling newspapers.
Wish they still did that for kids. It's such a great learning experience. Yeah, we can't do that anymore. But please continue.
It's crazy. But we have some cool stuff that kids can do, and that you can do as a parent to teach kids about money. We have a nice kind of 5-step process that we can talk about here in a little bit. But yeah, so I was selling. Now here I am. I'm in my late 30s. I've talked and sold to hundreds and hundreds of people, and I was scared to death to make that first call. And I'll never forget standing in my old office in our old house in kind of a little bit west of here, looking out the window. It was November of 2015, and just thinking like, okay, I got to call this person. I got to make this first call, and then I got to make this next call. And I was scared of the unknown, and that fear, that apprehension, that anxiety, it really comes from the unknown. And what beats that anxiety, what I found, was action.
You were going to talk about a 5-step process. I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah. So we got another tool. So you can get our book for free, and we can share all this with your audience. And we also, if you go to our website, it's you might have to type this in, nextlevelincome.com/kids. It's called 5 Ways to Set Your Kids Up for a Lifetime of Financial Success.
So, and I guess this is a practice that you've put into play and you work on with your kids, and you kind of develop that.
Yeah. So, and I'll tell you what, Tyler, I'll shoot it over here so you can take a look as we walk through this. And then you all, if you're listening, you can go ahead and download. You got it?
Is it /kid or kids?
I'll send it right.
You should probably send it to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're listening, again, you can download this and you can see kind of some of the steps that we have personally put into place for our 2 boys. So I think the first thing, it's pretty obvious. If you don't have a bank account for your kid, for your child, then go set up a bank account. That's step one. Talk to them about money. We don't talk specifics with our kids. So if my son says, "Hey dad, how much money did you make this year?" I'm not going to tell him, if it was $152,000 or whatever that number is. It might be 43,000. It might be 873,000. I don't have those specific conversations with my kids at this point. I don't think, that's not necessary at this point. But we do talk about money. We talk about, what it takes to buy their clothes, what it takes to go to camp. If we buy a car, we talk about, the cost of the car, negotiating and those sorts of things. So we're not shy about having money conversations in our family. Once you have that bank account started, and I walk through kind of the type of account you want, a custodian account in the document. The next thing is you have to have your kids use money. So we've set up a couple different things. Step one is people like to call it an allowance. We call it a salary. So our boys get $1 a day. It's really simple. So, this month has, what are we 30? Yeah, we're 30 months. So they'll get $30. We have a ledger book. I have a link in here to a little Amazon ledger. I wish I could reach out and grab it. It's downstairs with my boys right now. But it's a little accounting ledger, and it's got a date. It's got what that entry is. It has the amount, whether it's positive or negative. So we can put that amount in every week. And oh, by the way, if they leave the lights on, they leave the door open, especially in the winter. If they're disrespectful to their mom, or they don't do something that they're supposed to do, in their daily job, which is their responsibilities, they don't get their allowance that day. They don't get their salary that day. So we take that out. Or if like my son lost his hat last week, all right, he's going to have to pay for that out of his salary this month. And then every month, now this has changed a little bit during COVID because you couldn't even go into the banks for a while, but every month or so we'll go into the bank, and my boys, I pay them in cash, a lot of times just straight dollar bills, and they get to deposit their money in their bank account. And that's where step 3 comes in. So we talk about how to teach kids how to invest. Before I go on to that, I do dive into another level of paying your children, and that is actually hiring your children for your business. So if you have a business, I highly encourage you, once they're about 8 years old, the IRS says children can basically be employed to do things. They can model for your business. So if you use pictures, like I have pictures all over our website, blog posts, podcasts, those sorts of things. You can compensate your children for that. Talk to your CPA. We have company cars. Do you have your company cars washed? I mean, it costs a couple $100 to have a car detailed. We have buckets and hoses and soap and vacuums, and my boys are very comfortable washing our company cars, and they can be compensated for that. We have Airbnbs. They help clean the Airbnbs. So these are just a couple things, a couple ideas where you can pay your kids even above and beyond that quote unquote salary or allowance that they get. And there's some pretty cool things that you can do. So then how do you teach your kids about investing? So you've had these money conversations, you got a bank account set up, they have some money coming into them. They understand, we don't have checkbooks anymore. That's why we got the accounting ledgers. So I was like, I want the boys to understand how to account for money coming in and going out. When we go to the bank, a really simple way for you to teach your kids about investing is if they put $1 in the bank, match it, just like companies do with the 401k. So if we go to the bank, our family rule is our goal is to save 50%. So if my boys get paid $30, they had a good month, and they turned all the lights off and folded their laundry and didn't raise their voice to their mom, then let's say they say, all right, Dad, I'm going to put $15 in the bank. So I already paid them 30. They put 15 in the bank. I'm going to put another 15 in behind them. So now I'm in for $45 per kid, right? Yeah. But we don't pay for good grades, which obviously families do that. That's something you could do. You can mix and match whatever makes sense for your family to do that. But that's a really simple way I found is to teach the boys the value of saving and investing, because right now saving rates, interest rates are so low, Tyler. It's like, how do you teach the boys to invest? So that's kind of an instant gratification way. And then the boys, they look at their own account statements. So sometimes I've had one of my sons put all of his money from his birthday, all of his money from his allowance, which I didn't plan on. I had to take some money out of my bank account. So I had to match like $100, but he wanted to catch up with his brother. So he's like, man, if I save, I can catch my brother's quote unquote net worth. So I think that's a really easy way. Once you start paying your kids, look into starting a Roth IRA. Again, in this document, nextlevelincome.com/kids, I talk about how you can start a Roth IRA for your kids. Roth IRA is it's a very flexible way where you can start it in a custodial account. Let's say your kids are working for your business. They're 10, 12 in their early teens. They're making say $500 a month. You can take that money and you can have it direct deposited from their account each month into their Roth IRA. We use Vanguard, and Vanguard has great options. You can put it automatically into one of these funds that's like a target date fund. And now you get those statements that come in every month and you can show them what investing is. And my boys call it money working for you, because you can see that money growing and growing and growing over time. And now when they look at their investment accounts, their Roth IRAs, they see that they make more money from their investments than they do from their salary, their allowance every month. And that's pretty powerful. It doesn't take a lot of money at this age to outstrip that. So that's kind of the two levels of investing that we do. I also talk about starting a business. If you want to help your boys start a business, we started a jump rope business for the boys, where we were buying kind of the pieces and parts from China, and the boys were putting them together and selling them at the CrossFit gym. Yeah. And I think our cost of acquisition was it was like $2, something like that, for a jump rope, and they sold them for $10. That's a really nice profit margin. Yeah. Really nice profit margin. And then the last piece of the puzzle is teach them the true value and also the cost of college. I have a link to a great article that I read. College in a lot of like, if my boys say, when I go to college, I say, well, are you going to go to college? Like, what are you going to study? Why do you want to go to college? I think this is a really important conversation to have. The equation has changed over the last 20, 30, 40 years. And the math that we used to use when people say, well, when I went to college, I made more money in this. Well, you probably didn't pay $50,000 a year for college 40 years ago. The costs of college have risen astronomically compared to, inflation, compared to everything else. It doesn't make financial sense for a lot of people to go to college. And there's a lot of other options out there that weren't out there before. Now, I'm not saying your kids shouldn't go to college. I'm not saying my kids aren't going to go to college. I'm also not saying they are going to go to college. What I am saying is you should understand the return on your investment in college, and you should help your children understand that, especially if they're young and you start to educate them. Because what I would ask you is, if you had $100,000 and you were able to give that to your child, could they determine whether it would make sense to start a business, invest that money, or spend it on college? And the next question is, can you teach them that? So yes. That's the big piece I put as the last of the 5 steps of teaching your kids about money and really turning them into money pros. Because if you can teach them how to calculate that return on investment in their biggest initial financial decision that they're going to make in their adult lives, you're going to set them up for success.
That's really wonderful, and exactly why I talk to folks like you who are so deliberate in the way that they approach all of these things, but also willing to take a risk in their entrepreneurialism. And I want to kind of revert back to your working and profession in business now for a second, see if I could kind of peek behind a curtain a little. I hope you
Absolutely.
don't mind, because you've sold medical devices. Yeah, you sold medical devices. You've done significant real estate work. Now you're giving away books and advice and writing blogs and doing podcasts. Like, this is also a business? Like, what motivates you to do that business? And has it been, what's the growth trajectory been like?
Yeah, so I will say, Tyler, I've been blessed, with some good decisions, some luck along the way. And I mean, we can all talk about, the struggles we faced. And I mean, I talk about a lot of those in my book, and how they shape me. But the other side of that is there's been a lot of good fortune, and we're in a spot where, I have the ability to spend time, on things, like sharing this information.
Mhm.
But what really inspired me was, it was probably about 3 years ago. So we've been syndicating the real estate deals. We've been, talking to different investors. And as people learned and more people learned about what I did, I had people reach out to me asking for advice. And it wasn't, what should I invest in? It was like, how do I get to the point where I can invest? Chris, I can't invest. I don't have $50,000 to put in one of your deals, but I want to. How did you get there? How did you take those first steps? So I have a conversation. I'd write an email. I'd have another conversation. I'd write another email. That email was the same as the conversation I had the week before.
Yeah.
And then it was every day, it was once a month, then once a week, then every day I was having these conversations. And my marketing partner said, Chris, you should start a podcast. If you listen to the early podcast, Caleb was my partner. I was like, you should join me on this. He's a younger guy, he's about 15 years younger than me. We race bicycles together. And I said, let's start a podcast to help educate people into how they can get to this point. And that's where the next level income, make, keep, and grow methodology came to be. So, you kind of heard it. I was talking about, I talk about this with the kids. Hey, how do you make more money? Teach your kids about how to make money. Teach your kids how to keep money, how to put it in the bank, how to save. When it comes to adults, the keep part is going to be things like accounting strategies or tax strategies, insurance. So you don't lose everything you have because you don't have the right liability insurance, or, like me, if your father dies at 41 when I was 5 years old, you probably should have life insurance to protect your family. These are really important things. Only then, when you've gone through those two steps, can you get to the grow part. So we talk about how to make, keep, and grow your money on the podcast. We also started the blog. And what I found was, this education component, which is really what Next Level Income blossomed out of, was really a way to curate all this information that I'd learned. And you'll hear me say it. If you've heard me on other podcasts, you look at my book, my website, my podcast, our blog, the 5 ways to teach your kids or set your kids up for a lifetime of financial success. All of these tools are to help you take the shortcut to get to the same place that I am. Don't take 15 or 20 years to get there. You can do it a lot quicker. And I don't have it all perfectly figured out, but I will share with you all the secrets that I found along the way. And that's what really motivates me. Now we're doing a podcast every week. We're writing a blog almost as frequently, Tyler. I love being on shows like yours and, kind of cross-pollinating, if you will, some of the different ideas and learning what other people are doing out there. Yeah. And then I did start coaching people as well when I left my role in the medical device field. And the interesting thing was, this is the God's honest truth. It's not for the money. I do charge for my coaching because I think it actually makes it more impactful. But I did it because, I realized that's what I really enjoyed the most in my career, was helping mentor others that were coming up, behind me, teaching them the tricks of the trade. And I was like, you know what, I can keep doing this and keep having that impact.
That really resonates with me a lot. And the way I might sum it up really quickly is like, I got my oxygen mask on, and now I can help other people get their oxygen masks on. So that's why I'm doing this.
I love that. And if you don't mind, I'm going to expound on that.
Please.
People, I realize it's, trying to achieve financial independence. It's kind of a selfish endeavor, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to make enough money so I don't have to work again and I can do whatever I want. And if you think about it, that's kind of selfish. A lot of things that allow you to be a better person and ultimately have an impact, if you take a step back, it seems selfish. Like making as much money as you can seems kind of selfish. It seems kind of myopic. But if I said, hey, I'm going to take a day off, I'm not going to do any work. I'm not even going to talk to my wife. My kids are going to go to school. I'm going to go out to dinner by myself. I'm going to go to the spa. I'm going to get a massage. I'm going to relax by the pool. I'm going to go for a run or a bike ride. I'm going to totally relax, totally recharge. We call that self-care, right? True. And somebody's like, I'm going to take a self-care day. You don't hear people go like, what a selfish jerk that person is. But it's the same thing. You have to have good health. You have to have enough sleep. You have to eat well. You have to have enough exercise. All these things are really important. you also have to have good financial health if you want to make the biggest impact in this world and do that. So when you say, yeah, you got to put your oxygen mask on first, I mean, there is not a better thing to say. Like, you've got to focus on your own personal financial well-being before you can go out and make the biggest impact on the world and do that. And that's what really drives me. I think everybody becomes a better person, a more true to themselves person, with financial independence. There's also some bad apples out there that maybe they, but that's going to be anywhere. You have drugs in sports, you have cheating, you have the same thing in business, but that's true, I think, in the vast majority of people.
Yeah, I'm feel very similarly. Like, I don't know what we're all doing here on this planet, this plane, this dimension, whatever, but at the very minimum, well, you could put us in buckets of producers and consumers. And if we're collectively advancing humanity, we want it to be in a positive way. And I think it's the producers that are doing that at a higher level than are the consumers. So do you think that that's a learned thing, or do you feel like you have some gene that's got your on switch kind of stuck on?
I've never heard it put that way, but that is
I've never put it that way.
My wife would not argue with that. Yeah, my on switch is, I think, it's like stuck, like in hyper mode sometimes. And I've actually thought a lot about this. I mentioned my father passed away when I was young. I also lost my best friend in college, right in between my freshman and sophomore years. And what I realized was I had this this thought in the back of my head. It wasn't even a thought. It was subconscious that, life is finite, and when I was approaching 41 years old 2 years ago, this is when it really hit me. I was like, wow. I was like, this is what I've kind of had my head down for. Losing my friend made it very apparent that life was not infinite, that your days are not unlimited, that they're numbered. And again, if you look at it from an engineering perspective, if you have the value of time and you look at it as an equation, and the number of days that you're going to live are on the bottom of that equation, if you think that number is infinity, that value drops way down, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about cap rates before. If that number goes down to 10 days, if you had 10 days left to live, you would live much different.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. There's somebody out there that is listening right now, or, going about their business, and they only have 10 days left, and they don't know that, and I don't know how many days I'm going to have left. So I think those experiences, and knowing that, look, I have to make the most out of every day, and also knowing that I've been given the gift of another day on this earth that my friend wasn't given, I feel the responsibility to go out and do that. And now I think, after experiencing what I've done and just seeing the impact, and, you get a couple calls where people say, Chris, you changed my life, and this is why. My really good friend of mine from college called me just a couple of weeks ago, and he said, hey, I got to tell you, because of the advice you gave me in these investments, I can quit my job.
Yeah.
And he's very high paid individual with a very well-known company that almost everybody would know if I said it. And he just made some really good choices. And over the past 5 or so years, he's made some very disciplined investments, just putting money in every year. And now that passive income that's coming in supports him and his family. I said, what are you going to do? Are you going to quit? He's like, well, I don't know. I might work like on a contract basis, but I want to, these are I want to volunteer. I want to spend more time with my kids. He and I are going to be taking a trip together next summer. He gets to live a better life, and he may not quit his job, or he may work a little bit less. And I've heard it just over and over again, from different people that have been very conscious about their choices. And if you're conscious about it, you start to think about it. I'm here to help you, because that's what I really think it just makes people be able to live a better life.
You start appreciating that time, that appreciation and a sense of urgency combined, you can get an awful lot done.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's always a struggle, Tyler. I mean, I think what I'm talking about. I mean, there's some days I get up and I'm just like crushing it. Like today I got up at 3:30. It was wide awake, and I hit like mid morning, and I was like, whoa, I was like, I might need to take a nap. And I knew I had this podcast coming up. So I got fired back up. But then there's other days where it takes, it takes me a little while to get going. So you got to have that purpose out there kind of pulling you along. That's the big thing.
Yeah. So your dad passed when you were 5. Do you remember being told that?
Yeah, I remember. So he was in a plane crash. His plane went down in Lake Michigan. We grew up in Maryland, just south of Baltimore, north of Annapolis, or in between Baltimore and Annapolis, I should say. And he decided to fly up to Wisconsin to see his parents, and he was going to take me with him. My mom said, "No, Christopher's coming in the car with me." So we drove up. He flew up, and his engine failed about 10 miles out from the Green Bay airport where he was flying into. And I mean, if you're 10 miles out in Lake Michigan, you might as well be 10 miles out in the middle of the ocean. Like right. They're called the Great Lakes for a reason.
Yeah.
And I remember standing on the dock there with my mom, kind of, knowing what happened. I don't remember all the details, but I do remember my mom telling me that when it happened, I turned to her and I said, "Mom, it's going to be okay, because he's with Jesus now." And I have a lot of memories of my father, not a tremendous amount, but I do have a lot of memories of my father. I have a lot of memories of kind of the challenges that our family faced after losing him. And it certainly makes me appreciate every single day I have with my boys. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was going to be a weird question, but I don't have to ask it because you kind of answered it already. But my question was going to be like, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but because it is real, like, what did you get out of it? What were advantage is a weird word to use, but like, what advantages did you have as a result of that?
You know what? That's a very insightful question. And you're the first person to ask me that, because I've had this conversation probably about 100 times over the past few years. And here's what's interesting. So I'm a big fan of Malcolm Gladwell. He wrote Outliers. And I think it was Malcolm Gladwell that wrote it. And what he wrote was that there's this pretty high correlation between people that lose a parent being successful. And he talks about presidents and all these historic figures. And I remember reading that and just thinking, like, that's where that equation came into my mind, where I'm like, time is finite. If time's finite, you realize that the value of every day goes up. But it just, like, the light bulb went off in my head. And I've had a lot of there's a lot of political conversations that go on out there. And after the previous election, I was having a conversation with a friend's daughter who was a PhD student, and we were talking about what you can do with public policy, how you can help different people. And we were talking about healthcare, because that's what she was developing a technology in healthcare field. I've been in that, and we were having a conversation about healthcare. And she said to me during the conversation that, well, I had that view because, I was basically privileged. I'm a white male, grew up in a nice area. And I don't disagree with that. Look, wherever you grow up, it's going to give you an advantage or a disadvantage. Like, let's just not argue about that. That's just the bottom line.
100%.
But my point was, like, you can either make an excuse or you can, look at where you are and you can move forward. And I asked her, I said, "Do you think it was an advantage that I lost my father?" Because she said it in a really it was kind of a condescending tone when she dismissed what I thought because of kind of my position. And she's like, "I would never say that." I said, "Well, the research contradicts you." And it's not something you would ever wish on somebody. But I think if you're listening, if you've lost somebody, you probably realize that, it changes you, especially if it's somebody that you had that was close. But more than that, if we kind of step away from this conversation, anything you go through in life that's challenging, it has the potential to make you a better person. And here's the thing: when I left my W-2 role, I was so anxious, Tyler. I had the ability to walk away, never work again. We had plenty of money coming in passive income. And I was so anxious and I couldn't figure it out. And I realized several things here over the past year, but one of them is unless we're being challenged, we're not fulfilled. The majority of people, you don't want to be lazy. And I think I heard Grant Cardone talk about this with Ed Milet on a podcast a few years ago. And he talked about depression coming from basically unfulfilled potential. I was like, wow, that is controversial and really profound. Yeah. And I was talking to one of my coaching clients about just that. He's like, he was just kind of like, I've been in a weird spot lately. And I said, well, are you working out? He's like, no, I haven't been working out. I was like, well, what about, have you been on a date with your wife? And he's like, no, we haven't been on a date since we got married. He's got married here recently. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, what about, he's like, well, I'm not doing as well as I could in work. And I got this to do and that to do. And he was basically telling me all the things that he knew he should be doing, but he wasn't doing. And I said, here's where you got to start. You got to start with getting back to your workouts because you should be doing that. Mm-hmm. And, you work out, you eat right, you save money, you make those investments instead of watching football on Sunday. You read that book, or maybe you watch the highlights or half the game. Maybe you don't start drinking at noon. You wait to have a beer at 5:00 on Sunday, and you get a little bit done, or whatever your life may look like. So I think, when it comes to the advantages that we have in life, the bottom line is challenges have the potential to make us better. And if you don't have any challenges, you need to find a way to expand, to grow, to change. And that's what we're all meant to do, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And that's what really, you have a terrific background to understand this, Tyler. When we're getting better, when we're working towards something, that's when we feel fulfilled. It's not just when we achieve that goal. It's the process of growing and building that makes us fulfilled.
Completely agree with you. Jordan Peterson talks about just make your bed or pick up the heaviest thing you can and carry it. And those things, the challenges I enjoy. I'm not sure how to ask this question yet, but I'm thinking of the role that your mom had to take on do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have a younger sister. She's a little bit more than 3 years younger than me. Yeah.
Okay. So how did, if we were talking to somebody with a family that's very much like our profile, and they lost a parent, what is something that maybe your mom did as an example that you could offer that advice to somebody on the role that they need to be now for their kid?
Yeah, I think my mom was in a really challenging situation, and she passed away about 10 years ago. And she made a lot of mistakes, and she did a lot of good things. And I think the thing that she did was she realized that, as a single mother, she needed a support system for her kids. We went to church. She played piano in church. So I grew up, we go to church like 3 times a week. And, whether you go to church, whether you're religious or not, having that community of people surrounding you with a good value system is so, so important. That friend with the daughter getting the PhD, first off, he has 2 amazing, brilliant daughters that I'm trying to remember if they both went to Ivy League schools, but one we were at her med school graduation, so that tells you enough. The other is in Ivy League school for sure. I mean, just brilliant daughters, brilliant parents. Regardless of the conversation we were having, the point is, that was the type of person that was an impact on me. That individual introduced me to cycling. That individual gave me a money magazine that talked about investing. Just the fact that we were in that community allowed me to have experiences that I wouldn't have experienced without having my father figure in my life. So I had these other father figures in my life. She also remarried. So when I was 11, she remarried my stepfather, and their relationship wasn't perfect. If you're listening, your relationship's probably not perfect. If you're listening, you're married. My relationship with my wife certainly isn't perfect, but we know it's not perfect, and we work on it all the time on a regular basis. Maybe not all the time. Maybe that's part of the issue, but but we work on it on a regular basis. So my point being is, she supported us in the community with a community. She supported us at home by bringing in a father figure that could be there. And she kept us in the house we were in because that was in one of the best school districts in not only the county, but also the state.
Mhm.
And she also helped instill values. So saving, I remember I was always kind of a saver, but she'd take my dollars and she put them in the bank without me knowing it. And I was like, well, that kind of stinks because where's my money? But she helped me learn the value of saving, because then she's like, hey, look at how much money you have in the bank when I wanted to, buy something. She also supported me in sports and other things like that. And then she also helped instill really good study habits and those sorts of things. So again, my childhood was far from perfect. We struggled a lot in a lot of different areas, financially, just emotionally, with a lot of things, that were going on. And my parents weren't always able to be with me because they were both working. And I mean, the first year I was out as a professional, I made more money than either of them ever did.
Mhm.
So, I certainly didn't grow up in some fairy tale upper middle class environment. But if whether you're a single parent or whether you're listening, you have tremendous partner that you're raising kids with. I think making sure you just have those fundamentals in place really just helps give your children that much more of an advantage in life.
So you've had some high level athletic endeavors, particularly in cycling. So I want you to briefly tell me kind of what your cycling history is, and more importantly, how that has informed your being a parent for both the better and the worse.
That's another great question. And I think just because such a big part of my life is being a parent now, Tyler, we're talking a lot about this. It's nice to relate these experiences. So I started racing when I was 14 years old. I was state champ at 15. I've been All-American, been to the Olympic Training Center, raced in the Junior Olympics, trained with Lance Armstrong. And my team went pro, but I quit right before my team went pro. Big reason was because my friend had passed away, and I lost my passion for cycling. And also I knew I was meant for more. But the other part of it was, this was in the late 90s, and I had friends going over to Europe that were better than me, and they were coming back and they were quitting because of the drugs in the sport.
Yeah.
And I always say I was really lucky because I wasn't good enough to have to do drugs. And what I mean by that is I got the benefit of getting all the good stuff out of the sport. I got the discipline, I got the camaraderie, I got the community, I got the health. I didn't have the dream that was shattered because I couldn't achieve my dream because I didn't want to do drugs. I didn't have to do drugs, so I could choose not to do it. I walked away from the sport. As I went through life, I kind of alluded to this earlier. I realized that whatever you do, there's going to be somebody out there that's going to want to take a shortcut, that's going to want to cheat. I had a neighbor's father say to me one time, he's like, oh man, cyclists are the dirtiest athletes out there. And I looked at him, I pulled the keys to my car that I was standing in front of out of my pocket. And I said, I'll tell you what, if you can look me straight in the eye and say that you think professional cyclists that are tested anywhere, anytime, all around the world, having their blood taken, are dirtier than professional athletes, like, I don't know, like NFL players, or pick a sport where they have almost no testing whatsoever. I said, you can have my car if you can look me dead in the eye and say that. And he kind of shook his head and he said, that's a good point. And my point in saying that is, we're never going to get rid of all the cheaters. We're not ever going to get rid of all the white collar crime, or all the the people that are going to screw you. And I've had some experiences in business like that. But I want my children to understand that, yes, sports are important. I want them to pursue their own passions. My boys love lacrosse and soccer. They do like cycling as well, but I'm not pushing them to become cyclists. I want them to pave their own way. So, importance of sport, importance of pursuing the things that they're passionate about. And finally, the knowledge that, hey, the important thing is you do your best. Yes, I think it's important to win and go for that goal. But the real thing is, it's important to do your best, because when somebody beats you, whether it's fair or unfair, there's more to life than just winning. And if I can instill in them the desire to win, but the fulfillment from doing their best, then I'll be very proud of myself.
Do you coach your kids?
So yeah, actually, we started a cycling team at my older son's school. It's a NICA, part of the NICA league across the country. So I'm a coach with that team. I've also coached on their soccer team, assistant coach. I like to be the assistant coach because I want to, I want to kind of let somebody else go ahead and do that.
I'm with you. I part of the biggest problem my dad and I ever had was probably a result of his coaching me. And then when he quit, we quit that. And then we came together closer than we've ever been. Yeah, I try to keep my distance with the kids teaching. So you've got an awful lot going on between work and family. What are some of the habits or disciplines you've instilled to maintain some sort of life balance and counterbalance?
Yeah, well, certainly being able to walk away from a W-2 role where, I mean, there were weeks I'd work, 80, 100-hour weeks. There were months I'd work straight without a day off. I mean, I have so many memories of like rushing home. I was cooking dinner one time and I got a call from the OR. It was an emergency. Somebody had a broken neck, I believe it was, and they needed one of our products. And I literally left, a chef's knife and all the food on the counter and ran out the door as my wife was coming in with the kids. And I said,
Wow.
don't let him in. There's a knife on the table. So not having to, be a slave to other people's schedules certainly helped. So it's interesting. We have a bit of a dichotomy in that, we spend a lot of time with our boys in the mornings and in the evenings. They go to school. So my wife and I are still able to accomplish a lot during the day. And we actually hired a nanny to help out with the shuttling the kids around in the afternoon. And it was a struggle. We both wanted to spend that time with the boys, especially because we both have the flexibility to do that. But what we found was giving those 3 hours to the boys to get from school, give them some downtime, go to their sports. That means I can take a sauna. I can cook dinner for my family. My wife can go out with her friends if she wants. So when the boys come home and we have family time, we're not tied up over the bickering that we saw in the backseat of the car. We're not rushing in to try to make a quick phone call or answer some emails before dinner or have to do that after dinner. We have this really dedicated time. So my point is, we have family time blocked out in the mornings, in the evenings, on the weekends. We also have time blocked out for ourselves, Tyler. So as we talked about that self-care. So whether that's me going for a bike ride, my wife went out with some friends last night for dinner. That's so important. So block time out for yourself, block time out for you and your partner, and block time out for your family. That's unadulterated. That's super important, I think.
Yeah, I have a couple of non-negotiable things, but I like that idea about, I'm going to circle back to Grant Cardone. I've heard him say that when I'm with my kid, I spend 100% of the time with my kids. It's like he's 100% engaged in whatever it is. And if you don't have those inputs of your kids bickering in the back seat, the quality of that time does change. So I might have to have a conversation with my wife about how we manage all of that, because those things are definitely like the chipping away at you all day. And
it's no, it certainly makes a difference. And I think the more pure your time can be and directed, and that means the phone goes off. When I leave the office at 5 and turn the phone off and go take a sauna, like I'm not answering the phone during dinner. Phone's upside down, it's off. If you can't do that, if you're on call, if you have other things that are doing, pick time, find your time, make it a Saturday morning, whatever it might be. You can certainly carve it out no matter what your circumstance. I've been there.
Yeah. So I don't think I've asked you a single question that I have on my list of questions.
This has been an awesome conversation.
Yeah, I think we could do 10 hours of this. But I'll kind of get to the standard questions that I ask everybody. And if we got more time, we'll keep rolling. But if not, I want to make sure that we get these kind of fun ones in. So we've hardly even talked about parenting. But let's ask this one. What's an advantage that you had growing up that your kids do not have?
I think that hardship, when kids, so my wife lived more of an upper middle income lifestyle. Her father was like an upper manager. Her mother never had to work because they made a lot of money, or he made a lot of money. They lived, really nice homes, nice neighborhoods. He bought her a Jeep when she was young. what I found was when some hardship started to occur in her life, like she lost somebody or something happened, it was a bigger challenge for her to overcome those things. And again, this goes back to that prior conversation. I think just those little struggles that you have, it's like, okay, my grandmother made my clothes. We ate vegetables out of cans. We didn't get them from our garden or Whole Foods, right?
Yeah.
My kids don't have to think about money. So that's a blessing. And it's also a challenge that has to be overcome. And if you're listening, you're like, what, listen to this guy complaining about, these things. I think that my work ethic comes from the desire to have the ability to do the things that I was not able to do as a child, like take nice vacations, buy clothes off of, a rack or in a store. I tell my wife, one of my proudest things in my life is that I can tell her to go to Whole Foods and she doesn't have to ask me how much she can spend, any of that. She wants to go to Whole Foods or out to dinner with her friends, she can do that. Mm-hmm. And to me, that is, it's an amazing thing to be able to offer to my family. But it's something that my boys probably take for granted. And that's something that, you have to consider as you become more financially successful.
So do you find yourself like manufacturing hardships for your kids or manufacturing challenges to make them more resilient?
I don't, but that's where I think sports is so important. And also like we do talk, like they have friends that have different economic situations than we do, different financial situations. We have those conversations. We talk about like, hey, why does your friend live in an apartment, with their 3 siblings and, and their mother, like this far away from the city? Why are we able to do this? They understand where the money comes from and those sorts of things. But they also like our clothes my kids do wear like hand-me-down clothes, from our friends. Mm-hmm. If they lose something, they have to take their money and buy it. It's not like an unlimited, pot of money. They have a Nintendo Switch, a gaming system. They bought that with their own money. I didn't give that to them. Yeah. So we do things to make them appreciate that. The sports, the hard work, like they're expected to work hard. We put my older son in a school as a very rigorous academic program. Mm-hmm. We try to push our children in areas that we're able to, not to necessarily manufacture challenges, but to give them the appreciation of what they have and also the hard work that it takes to get, the most out of this life.
It reminds me recently that Shaquille O'Neal told his son, oh no, we're not rich. I'm rich.
Oh, I like that.
I thought that was
That's
pretty good.
Yeah.
So all right, I'll get to what I call the rapid fire questions, but we go on. So money's no object, time, space, reality's no object. If you had an opportunity to give a gift to every single father on the planet, what gift would you bestow upon those fathers?
Wow. I found myself thinking about like, what physical gift what it would be, but it immediately went to, it goes to the time. Yeah. And the gift I would give to those fathers is if you are a father who is blessed, who has money and has the ability to spend time with your children and has a good family life, kind of like Scrooge, where you get to look at the other side of the equation and see those children that don't have a father. Or like my friend who says, I wish I never had a father because, he's an abusive alcoholic, to see the other side of the coin. But then also for those fathers to see how lucky they are to have a son and what life could be like, and to see those moments and the love and the change that they could be in that individual's life. I know that's not physical, but that perspective, I think would change everyone's life on this planet.
That might be my favorite answer I've ever heard. Nice, Chris. I like that a lot. Let's see. When in your life do you feel the most love?
It's with my boys, without a doubt. Like, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, when they come home, so we have our office that sits up on the 3rd floor. I get to look out over Asheville and the mountains, and I'm in the canopy, and I saw the pileated red-headed woodpecker out here this morning, pecking away, or the bears walking up here. But my favorite is when it's about 6:45 in the morning, and one of my boys comes up into the office and still climbs into my lap, gives me a hug, says he loves me. I told my older son, I was like, man, I remember in our first house when he used to cuddle with me when you'd come into the office. It was right next to his bedroom. And because I know those days aren't going to be there, forever. But I hope they last as long as they can.
My father-in-law says he remembers the very first day that my wife didn't jump off the bus and run and give him a hug.
Oh,
Like every day for her whole life. And then that one day, suddenly it changed. So it makes you want to be at that bus stop every time. You'll drop everything to make sure you're at that bus stop.
Yeah. Those little moments are just amazing.
So who's your favorite television dad?
Favorite? Geez, I haven't watched TV in so long.
How about fictional dad?
Yeah. So I have to think about kind of what some of the some of the shows. You can't say Bill Cosby anymore, right? That's
not anymore.
I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. That was a bad joke.
You could say Mr. Huxtable, maybe Dr. Huxtable, but not Bill Cosby.
yeah. We can't. No, we're not going to joke about that. Geez. I really have not watched TV in so long, especially these things. But what was the I'm trying to remember what the name of the show was with the single father, but again, that kind of goes back to epitomize Full House. That's right.
Oh yeah.
Full House. That was, as I go back, that was like the show, if you looked at, but it wasn't just one father. And I think, it's, to me, a family is more than just a father and a mother. And that show, it just showed how, the community aspect came into play. I just remember watching that show and kind of like, almost being like jealous of the kids in that show. And now when I look back with the perspective I have, it's kind of crazy to think about that. But maybe I could relate a little bit. Or maybe it's just because I had a crush on, one of the girls on the show. I have no idea.
Right. Okay. The billboard question. So you were going down the highway 70 miles an hour. Every dad is driving by it, and you get to rent a billboard, and your message fits on that billboard. And it's the best piece of parenting advice you can give.
There's actually a billboard right on the other side of the mountain here. And it's something to the effect of, you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect dad. Mm-hmm. And I don't need to come up with my own advice, but you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect dad. Like, time with your kids, quantity of time with your kids is quality. And like you mentioned, being at the bus stop, just these little conversations. Somebody be like, well, Chris, you have less time with your kids because you're not driving around and running around. That quality, having more of those quality moments, because I do have more time with my kids where I'm focused and I'm not distracted and doing other things. Again, don't kick yourself if you're not perfect. Just keep spending time with your kids, be there for them, have those conversations, take a couple of the tips that we talked about and share it with them and see where that goes.
Do you think pursuing perfection is a worthy endeavor?
Ooh, it's certainly a worthy endeavor. I don't know if it's a fulfilling endeavor, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I think, improvement is, constant improvement. Kaizen is the Japanese call it, I think is how I would prefer to focus on. Because there's always somebody that's better, that's faster, that has more money. You look at Bezos, it's like, or Bill Gates, it's like a lot of these people, they fall hard,
Mm-hmm.
And it's, if you're going for perfection, if you're always going for more, there's no true balance in life, in my opinion. But if you want to be the best, if you want to be really good, if you want to be perfect at something, everything else probably has to fall away.
Yeah.
And if you try to be a perfect father, you may end up being worse just because, there's no such thing,
Yeah. Well, so what are as perfect as we can get as fathers? What are maybe 2 or 3 characteristics that like a super dad has to have?
Um, yeah, well, first off, love, right? Like
Mhm.
you have to, and for most of us, that's easy. Like we love our children, we love them unconditionally. Um, the the ability to support your child, I think, um, whether my boys want to be cyclists or not, being able to say, hey, my son's different than I am. I'm going to support that passion. I think that to me, I really want to allow my children to develop their own individual passions. And I'm trying to find ways, to support that. But also allow them experiences so that they can go out there and find, those other passions within themselves to do that. And that's kind of the other piece. It's like, the whole helicopter parent, which I feel like that was probably the generation before us, Tyler. But, you have to let your children fail. Like they have to fall down sometimes and get themselves back up. Like it's okay for your children to fail. And the most important thing isn't to not let them fail. It's to make sure that they have the ability, the strength, the resolve, the mental tenacity, and frankly, no, not some sort of catastrophe, so that they can get back up after these small failures. They say what, fail forward, fall forward, fail forward. I think that's the last piece of that puzzle.
I find myself in my parenting mode defaulting more and more to getting out of the way versus my default being time to intervene. And
Yeah.
that challenge being like when to get out of the way, being super
Yeah.
important. I want to expand on something you said, love being the first one. Could you talk a little bit about loving yourself and how that impacts your ability to love someone else?
Yeah. I think a lot of people struggle with this, I mean, especially if you talk about being perfect or a perfectionist, you're there's some value in being self-critical. There's some value in constantly analyzing and saying, hey, how can I get better in this way? If you're an athlete, you're saying like, yeah, that's like why I'm good. That's like why, I look in the mirror, I'm going to get up and make myself better every day. But also there's the other side of that, which is you have to give yourself some grace. You have to, have the ability to be comfortable if you do fail and you do make mistakes. And if you're always dwelling on what you did wrong or what you could have done better, you're taking your eye off of, just continuing to move forward and do that. So I think, being able to love yourself and be comfortable, it does make it easier to have a healthy, loving relationship, because you can be in love with somebody and you can have a relationship that's not healthy. It's codependent because you're trying to fill an area within yourself. And this is coming from somebody that's spent numerous hours sitting down, talking through this with professionals. And that's okay. If you're struggling, if you're struggling with something in your life, seek help. I had a conversation with a man that's very close to me, another guy that's very close to me, and he's struggling with addiction. He's struggling with alcohol addiction. And we were talking about his relationship, and he's like, I was like, well, why were you in that relationship? And he said, oh, because I'm a, he didn't say this, but he said, basically, I'm a wussy because I'm a wussy. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, that's not it. I said, you have this issue that you've never resolved. And the fact that you won't seek professional help, that's what makes you a wussy. Like, it's not that you are one. It's the fact that you're not seeking help. And I think as men, if you're listening, your father, it's like, regardless of all the things culturally that are going on today, oh, we're supposed to, be more in touch with our feelings. And we're a lot of men are still macho, and they don't want to go get the help that's needed, especially for issues that may have happened during their childhood, an addiction that they're struggling with, a problem that they have. There is no pride in going without help and continuing to struggle with the issues that you have.
Yeah, I'm going to shout out Hunter's podcast, which was 2 episodes ago. He talks about that a lot. It was a great conversation.
Llama Wood, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
You got it. LlamaWood.com, shout out. And my final question, before I ask it, nextlevelincome.com, is that the spot? You're probably on Facebook, Instagram, and all the rest as Next Level Income?
Yeah. So we hardly even talked about like the book and all that, but so I mentioned, like, I expand a lot on my story, the process, all these things that we talked about, Tyler, in the book. Nextlevelincome.com. You get a free copy of our book. Just click on the book link. You can even put your address in. I'll send you a copy. Nextlevelincome.com/kids. That's where you can get a copy of Raising Your Young Money Pros. Those are those 5 ways to set your kids up for a lifetime of financial success. Our podcast is up there, the blog's up there, and my contact information is up there as well as all the big social media channels.
Awesome. Well, I've enjoyed this immensely. I feel like we could do it for forever. But here comes my last question.
Yes, sir.
This recording will last generations of Larsens. If you could give a message to every generation from you to them for every generation on, what's a message you would share?
I would share this: the actions you take today, make sure that your children will be proud of that. If you're struggling with a decision, look in the mirror and say, will my children be proud of this decision that I'm about to make? If you can't say yes, there's probably a good chance you're making the wrong choice. And in my personal mission statement, I put that, I say my biggest thing is I want my children to be proud of their father. Because if I go through life and I'm struggling with the choice, do I sue this person? Do I make this investment? Do I go to, do I become a, coach of this team, whatever that may be? If I put it through that lens, it is really clarifying. So that's what I would say. Look yourself in the eye, in your mirror, and say, would my children, when they're adults, be proud of me if I do this?
Thank you, Chris.